All right, it looks like we're live. Hello, Facebook. How's it going? I'm doing something very, very new. I'm here with my friend Mike. We were doing a Men's Health Monday today. And one thing that we've been doing is we've been doing this Men's Health Monday for a few weeks, a few months now on Instagram. We decided to take it over to Facebook for this week. We also are maybe going to be taking it to YouTube, hopefully in the future, and being able to share to hopefully Instagram in the future. But what I noticed with something like this, we're using something called StreamYard or a streaming service, is that we have the ability to create more features. Instagram is kind of limited. We're not able to share. I noticed we had quite a few episodes where we were talking about the importance of men's health, and we're referring to a specific video. And now we actually have the chance to respond to a video. So we're going to respond live to a video for the first time, actually doing a response video. And something that I've been personally wanting to get into is responding to more videos around health, veganism, animal rights, all kinds of different stuff. So today we're going to be responding to someone who's pretty popular in the comedian world, and his name is Bill Burr, and he's actually speaking to someone that is a really big podcast host named Ethan on the H3 podcast. And Bill Burr is known for someone that just kind of tells it like it is, no bullshit, no filter, doesn't care what he says, and he doesn't really care so much what people think of him. He's kind of like that type of person. And most of the time he speaks the truth. You know what I mean? He's really, really blunt. He doesn't really seem to lie. And it's a really interesting clip of him talking about health, which is something that I found really, really fascinating, because he actually went to a nutritionist and got some advice. And we're going to play that clip here in a minute and talk about it. But before we jump in, Mike, is there anything that maybe you want to share relating to men's health, and maybe why why you're passionate about this, and what we can look to in the future as we continue doing these?
Yeah,
Put you on the spot.
Throw me on the spot there, fella. Men's health is incredibly critical. I think, the obvious reason being how stubborn men are, and how typically bad men are with taking care of their health, taking their health seriously, going in for appointments, or like actually addressing things that could be problems instead of ignoring them. Just in general, men need to be having this discussion more with each other, and just for us with others, and sort of showing people, or leading the way, that it's okay to actually have discussions, to be human, to not have it all figured out, and to ask for help, which is what this what we're going to be addressing today, right? Which is our comedian Bill Burr, who actually, as you said, went to a nutritionist and sought help for diet, instead of just doubling down on Whoppers and French fries or whatever. So yeah, that's pretty much all I had for now. And I guess looking forward to the future, opening up this for men, and seeing more of a community start to build, where we can actually achieve what I just talked about, which is breaking down some of those barriers, and being more attentive to health, being more proactive with health, helping each other understand and recognize signs of good and bad health through sharing openly, instead of wondering in doubt and silence, and isolation, whether something is wrong with us, or if it's common, or if whatever, right?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I wanted to say is, am I cutting out a little bit, or is it still okay?
I think we just have an audio visual like misalignment or lag, but no, you're not cutting out.
All right, sounds good. So one thing that I wanted to say to what you were talking about is about the video that we're going to watch right now, is that one of the issues that made this kind of video more viral is that they kind of claimed that Bill Burr was body shaming this particular person on and talking about their health in that way. But if when you listen to it, it turns out that he was giving him some sound advice. Really quickly before we jump into the video, what could you say to men body shaming other men and how that can be effective for them, you know, in their help, or is there an effective way, you know, for it to be done, if that makes sense? Because I know that men and women can take that differently. You know, if someone's like, my dad, I remember my dad was like, "Hey, man, you're getting fat, you're getting chubby, you're gaining some weight. You know what I mean? Like you need to fix yourself, you know, or something like that." But I just took it as like, "Yeah, you're right. Like I do." Like I looked in the mirror, like, yeah, you know what? Like there are some things I got to change, but I know not everyone feels that way.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so for sure this will be, you know, perhaps an unpopular opinion, and definitely something that's not as openly spoken about in our current, you know, hyper gentle society, I'll say. You know, we typically see two different energies in humans, right? Masculine and feminine, and feminine's more nurturing, feminine's more likely to, you know, protect feelings and emotions. But like, I think throughout the course of humans' evolution and our interaction, you know, within nuclear families and stuff, the male is the one sort of harden or toughen the, you know, the offspring or children or what have you, you know, is there to toughen them up to get them ready to go face the world. And so, you know, as a result, we, you know, we tend to be more direct and more blunt. And I think that that's necessary. And I think that there's obviously, you know, if you're mature and you're just moderately educated, you can walk that line without being abusive or going over, you know, over the top. But yeah, I mean, telling someone, like, there's a reason that you know, the word fat exists and was used and used to be used in our dialect, right? And if you know, an object is supposed to be a certain size and you see it and it's way wider or larger, you would call it fat. So like a human being that's larger is, you know, in let's say in this instance called fat. And pointing it out or saying it is important, right? And dodging around it or telling people, like, we have this weird energy in our society right now where we're pushing, you know, like plus size models, and people are saying like big is beautiful. And I'm not saying that there should be any shame or any, like, you know, hatred or negativity directed to people of different body shapes, but like, typically speaking, healthy is optimal, and therefore, you know, being overweight is not good. It's not something that we should celebrate and clap for, but we should celebrate and clap for those people for who they are and what they accomplish, just not for their directly their body shape. And I think if someone could say, like, hey, you're a little overweight and, you know, it might be helpful to lose that weight, I think that's maybe a good thing. Within context, you don't want to have that like as you're just walking down the street and people are like, hey, you're fat. But I think, like, within context, depending on who it is, a parent, a family member, someone who like does genuinely care about you, right? And you know that they're not saying it just to like yell at you in the street. It's a good thing, right? And so yeah, especially when it comes to like within the male community, because that's how we're hardwired. It would make that much more sense that that's how we interact amongst each other. And men are a lot gruffer typically, right? You know, a hyper masculine environment will have a lot, you know, poking at each other and giving each other a hard time. And part of that, I think, is just like the evolution of our species, because in the past it would have been wrestling and fighting and sparring and, you know, some more violent act, but like that, it's partnered with testosterone, right? We're always jockeying with each other for like different hierarchical structures, right? Like we have different hierarchies, whether they be social or whatever, right? And we're always just sort of playing with that, you know, because we're driven to from like a primal basis, right? And we've modified or as I said, made it like less violent and more socially acceptable. We still do it, you know. We still, your body like is slower, or drops something, and guys will just be like, way to go, Butterfingers, way to go, droppy hands. Like, that's just that's what we do.
Yeah, for sure. I totally understand exactly what you're talking about. And whatever side you're on, whether you think some type of body shaming is good or bad, or none at all, or we should avoid it at all cost, whatever side of the fence you're on when it comes to that, we're going to watch this clip right now. And what we're going to see is actually trying to help the other individual, and but it definitely is not something that I think is body shaming by any standards. And we're going to have this clip for anyone that's watching either the replay or whatever. We'll have this in the description in the comments below so that you can watch this video yourself and decide for yourself.
We're talking about me being fat, not being able to lose weight.
Yeah,
we're talking about how you're not that fat, but you need to gain
3 months, dude. I'm giving you.
And
the
you know what's
smoothie
happening
right
right
now?
now?
Oh, you got this espresso?
on my phone. You're getting smoothie recipes.
All right, that one's gonna taste like a chocolate shake. That's the one, and then I'll give you my
Read me
green
that.
smoothie.
Here.
All right, this is from Bill.
All right, so real quick, what's happening right here is they're on the podcast, this guy's podcast, Ethan. He's responding to Bill Burr, and they're on the topic of weight and health and those sort of topics. And Bill Burr's just like, hey man, I'm going to show you some of the things that I've been doing. And the girl across from him, I believe, is his wife, this guy's wife. And so she's on the boat of like, hey man, I care about you. That's what this is all about. Has nothing to do, and what she said in the beginning had nothing to do with your weight or your size. This is just, hey, this is about some healthy alternatives. So this is him sharing some recipes with him right now. It should be playing. It's not playing.
Bill, almond milk. I love almond milk.
No.
Ice.
Oh.
Love ice.
There you go.
That's it. That's all it is.
No.
Banana almond butter.
Yeah.
What is maca powder?
Maca powder, you can get that at like a GNC or something like that. It's like a protein.
Okay, protein powder and cinnamon.
Yeah.
That
cinnamon.
sounds delicious.
It is delicious in it, but it's not going to send your salt. You're not going to be chasing salt and sugar all day like a junkie. So then you do that.
So real quick, he talked about like some kind of almond milk, kind of chocolatey protein kind of drink. And in my mind, what that's going to do is like what he just said. It's not going to send you on these sugar spikes, these salt spikes. It's going to be something that's going to satisfy you, but it's going to be closer to things that you actually need that are more nutrient dense, like a maca root or a maca powder, right? Or something like that. That's going to be much more nutrient dense, and you're less likely to reach for some of the other things. And the part of the idea, especially for someone that's making changes like this, in my mind, is these small changes. Like, hey, maybe you were going for the soda before, right? Maybe you were reaching for that energy drink before. That was the thing that did my dad in at this age. Energy drinks like 3 times a day, 4 times a day. You know what I mean? And like, what if he had this alternative as well? Is there anything that you want to respond to this so far?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, specifically with maca root. First off, it's not really a protein, but it's powder. I think he was more so just trying to say like it's a powder, right? You get it in packaging and in the form that you would get protein powders. But like, men everywhere should be taking maca root. It's fantastic for stress. It's an incredibly potent thing to incorporate into your diet to help reduce stress. And I know that men, house stress differently, and it's definitely a factor in a lot of premature, aging, but more importantly, premature death. So yeah, I just wanted to hammer in on the matter. Take note of that, and out there, this should be incorporated into your diet for sure. But yeah, that's all I have there.
All right, awesome. But we're gonna continue
That, and then in between your breakfast and lunch, you just have like fruit and almonds and stuff like that. And I kind of eat. I had an nutritionist, and he gave me all of these meals, and I just picked out 3, 4 of my favorite for each time,
Right.
like lunch and breakfast. I'm not too good with the dinner ones. I got to get back into those. But if you just have like 2 or 3 of those, and you just sort of rotate them, and then every once in a while, Even if every 3-4 days you just go out, like people always try to say you have a cheat day. Like I've heard you have a cheat meal. That's what you.
Real quick before he gets into this topic, I found that to be pretty interesting. You have a set list of meals, that are really, really, high quality, good for you, right? That are gonna, maintain your day. And you have, let's say, 3 at breakfast, 3 different options at breakfast, 3 different options at lunch, and 3 different options at dinner. Now you have 9 different options, to choose from throughout your day. And he says he does pretty good for the first 2, like breakfast and lunch, and then struggles a little bit in dinner. And for me, my experience, that is so common from people that are trying to make a change and do better for themselves. But guess what? If you're trying to do better for yourselves and you're trying to make an improvement, and you go from 3 out of 3 meals, 100% of your meals are not good, right? And you go 66%, right, of your meals are great, and maybe that 33%, your last meal isn't so good. You're already doing wonders for your body, wonders for your nutrition, wonder for your improvement. And I think that is, to me, like, that's already great advice right there, and that's already a huge improvement if most people took it like that. Some people think it's an all or nothing. I got to go all in. I got to do everything perfect. I got to make sure I'm eating everything right. Oh crap, I had some cookies, I had some ice cream, I messed up, now I'm giving up. Now it's over. My whole stretch of trying to be better is over. But that's kind of silly, and that's kind of nearsighted, so to speak. Right?
Yeah, I think, when it comes to these types of like shifts, it's really important for people to not overreach or overshoot, right? And what I mean by that is, so, a lot of people will think, okay, yeah, I'm going to switch my meals. I'm going to switch 2 of 3 meals, even, let's say in this example. But I think, where longevity comes from in terms of change and making progress is through little or, small steps. And I would say it's we often focus about the things we want to take out of our diet. And so it's this feeling of loss. Right. But really what we should be doing is learning about what foods are good for you and what you need to be adding in your diet. What am I missing? What do I not have that I need to add? And then you find out, okay, well, I need carrots. Okay, well, let's try and figure out some ways that I can add carrots to my diet, or, and then make it realistic. Say, like, this week I'm adding carrots to my dinner. And then next week I'm adding new food and lunches. Right. And the way that, diet, the way that your metabolism works is if you're including these good foods, you're automatically going to be reducing or limiting something else, right? Typically something that's not good, that's not healthy. Right. And, I saw in our comments there too that, I think it was Miguel was saying, like, sugar's addictive, right? So expecting someone to make, a drastic shift or change, is usually where you get that kickback where it's, they end up collapsing on the dinner meal. It's like if they go all day trying to not eat something, and then at dinner it's like, oh shoot, I craved, the ice cream or this or that, and I gave in. So yeah, I'd say it's more about just trying to slowly build in the right stuff, and before if whether it's day by day or week that you're adding new things, other stuff starts to fall off, or you just don't have the space or capacity to build it into your diet the way you used to. And all of a sudden you're eating these healthier things, and it's more manageable. You don't have these massive, swings back into binge eating. It's like, if you're eating Oreos right now, like, keep eating your Oreos, but you know what? Make sure before you eat that, post-dinner box of Oreos that you eat 2 carrots, or you're eating banana or whatever, right? And build off there.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. All right, so we're going to continue. He's getting into some cheat meal stuff information now.
Yeah, you don't, because you fuck up for a whole day, dude. That can turn
That's
into
bad.
You can go a whole year. If you don't understand cravings and what your body is telling you. Like, I've really learned with addiction. Addiction is just simply doing something that you don't want to be doing. Like, I don't want to be doing, like me with cigars. It's like, I didn't want to smoke last night, and I did. And it's just like, so there's a form of addiction there. It's not like I wake up like I need a cigar, man, but I have a problem.
Yeah.
I have to address the fact that I have to be driving the ship, being like, I said once every 2 weeks, craving, okay? And now you're just, I'm sliding off the rails here. So you just have to, I'd love to quit those fucking things. I really should. So that's, there's always something. But then it's like, I haven't drank in almost a year.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But it's like...
So then it just
sucks,
becomes,
though,
at the end of the day, you're like, well, what it is you open Pandora's box where you started getting a buzz. So then you have to stay straight edge to the point that you don't think, because, basically for the first 17 years of my life, I was straight edge because, I was like, I was a baby.
Yeah.
And then, I wasn't like, oh, God, what a day at the playground. I need a drink. You know what I mean? There was none of that. But then once you get into that, it's just like, there's just so little information about how once you go off on your own, how you have to be your own parent. You have to say it's time to go home. It's time to go to go to bed. You need it, and like all of a sudden, it's just that overwhelming sense of freedom of you don't have your parents, you're not in school anymore. I don't have to fucking read anymore.
Right.
I love Oreo cookies. I'm gonna buy a whole fucking box if I'm gonna sit here and eat them.
No, it's
Nobody's telling me what to do, and you start sitting there thinking you're a rebel, and it's just like.
Do you ever feel like when you're like, for example, I don't enjoy weed. I wish.
You want to comment on some of the things he was saying there, because that's definitely some interesting perspective on addictions and going through it and navigating and also taking responsibility and accountability, for our choices. Like this radical kind of really challenge that I think is facing a lot of men today.
Well, yeah, and I think what's missing from the conversation now so often is the discussion of willpower. Like willpower is very important, and I think that we live in a world right now where willpower is not prioritized in the way that it should be, and so a lot of people have a lot of trouble sticking to their commitments and changing habits. And I think it's hard, right? And addiction is is real, right? And like white sugar addiction is really strong. When they've done scans of the human brain, when it reacts to white sugar, it parallels or exceeds the addictive values or properties that we would measure for something like cocaine. So it's no joke that people are addicted to it, but it does take willpower to to break those cycles. I think that's something that's missing. And even like Bill Burr says, he's got his cigars, and it's like if you're able to kick sugary foods, if you're able to kick these other things that like I've smoked cigars and cigarettes and stuff in the past, he totally could quit the cigar, but that's a willpower, right? There's a part of him who wants to enjoy those cigars and is not willing to smoke it. And it's funny how we can kind of control those floodgates and turn them on and off. And if it's something that we think is important, even both things, diet and let's say not smoking cigars, they're both maybe important, but we're able to somehow convince ourselves, okay, I have the willpower, I need to do this, it's going to happen. And then the other, for some reason, it's just I'm working on it, I'm trying to, but I haven't got there yet. I'm weaning down. So yeah, I think it's such an interesting point to have, right? And just to Miguel in the comments too, again, I'm reading the comments as we go. And previously there was a comment about some people don't like talking about their body or their weight, and of course that's understandable, right? We both work in the health realm, so we're aware that some people can be really touchy about it, and it's not just it's the body in general, right? It's like we're trapped in these weird ooey gooey things that are like, warm and squishy, these bodies, right? And they have all these things that, come out of them, and we're embarrassed about a lot of it. And we don't like talking about a lot of it. And again, that's why like Men's Health Monday is a thing, right? Especially men, we're so like shy and reserved about talking about this stuff. So yeah, people are naturally uncomfortable about it, and that's okay. But we need to try to break down some of those barriers, especially when it pertains to, something that can be helpful, right? Something that can benefit those people. I mean, if you saw like a tick or a leech or something, even a mosquito, like sucking on someone and drinking their blood, you'd probably mention it, right? Even though it's kind of like gross and weird and whatever, right? You'd probably try and help that person. So like health stuff is just a different extension of that. It's all a matter of perception, right? And it's one thing to like pry and get involved in someone's business when you have no reason to or no place to. But and even to your point, Miguel, like I think these guys sort of have some pre-existing relationship. They didn't just both as like strangers in the professional realm. And so yeah, they can be a bit more direct and make some, Bill can give some advice or commentary from a place of love, even though it's a bit direct. But I think that's really where we should be as a society. We shouldn't be dancing around everyone's feelings so heavily. I think there's a place for feelings, right? And we should be, aware of that. But our species on the whole will do a lot better. We'll excel a lot further and faster if we push each other, if we're honest with each other, and if we do deal with, these things directly. So yeah, that's just sort of my take on the addiction section. Kev, what do you got to say there?
Yeah, can I add one thing to that real quick and we'll continue. So something that I thought is everyone has a different, well, I think everyone has a different toxic level that they can endure, but everyone has a different willpower level that they control within themselves. You know what I mean? And so I noticed as I continued making my journey of like maybe eliminating things in my life that don't serve me, right? The first few things, if I had like a list of 10, right, the first few things were pretty easy. You know what I mean? Maybe for Bill Burr, it's pretty easy to make the switch to this almond drink and drink some green juice. He's going to talk about here in a minute. But maybe the cigars is so much tougher, and it's further down the line. You know what I mean? As far as what he's willing to give up. And maybe the guy in front of us right now that we're looking at, Ethan, maybe he's on the other end of the spectrum, is like, yeah, giving up the alcohol. I don't know his situation, but maybe he's like, yeah, giving the alcohol and the cigarettes, was really, really easy relatively. But maybe, having giving up, the junk food every single meal is not something that is as easy or can be done, So I think it's a little bit to do with that. It's like when someone wants to make those decisions, sometimes they make certain ones first, and by the time they get to the other ones, they're at the end for a reason, and they become harder for a reason. And the whether it's the addiction level or a connection to stress or connection to family ties or culture or friends or family, there's a lot of different reasons, right? That one might, maybe Bill Burr's connection with cigars is stronger than it is with food because he spends time smoking with his friends, and that's an important time for him. And if he doesn't have that, what's the alternative, right? Whereas he could go eat food alternatively with someone, and still enjoy the company with food that's different than maybe the atmosphere or the environment that it is with the cigar, right? So it's less about the cigar and the smoking and the health in the situation, and it's more of an environmental thing, right? So I think that can play into it as well. I know that it was struggle working in the fast food industry to not eat animal products. That was harder, than not being in that environment, right? And for some, it could be impossible to overcome, right? But what I want to do is I want to skip ahead a little bit, if that's okay with you, so that we can get most of this through. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say really quickly that, I think willpower is sort of like a muscle, right? And we all up at different places in our lives through our experiences as youngsters developing that muscle. And, you could think of that genetic disposition So some people are born into a situation where they basically end up with a stronger willpower than others. But on the whole, it's a muscle. And so I agree with what you're saying, Kevin. I think, the goal is to continuously develop that muscle so we can work our way up that list, right? And as we get older, we can hone in on those stronger things and not just say, okay, I have some willpower, that's enough for me. It's like, no, life is always about continuous growth, right? So yeah, but let's jump ahead.
Yeah, so we're gonna just jump ahead to a few other parts of this video because I don't want to. I'm not going to share this whole video, but you guys will get a chance to watch in the description below. What did you said, Mike?
I was responding to Miguel and said, yeah, you should hang out with more healthy vegans for sure, 100%.
I mean, it makes a difference when I'm with all the unhealthy. As much of as I love them, I eat like them a lot more often. And if I'm trying not to, then sometimes I got to put myself in other environments and situations.
It will kill, and that will kill me.
Well, you know what? You just said that, and there's a cheeseburger place I want to try out here that I'm going to probably go to today.
All right, so right now they're talking about animal products and cheeseburgers and how he feels about this. So I think this is interesting because some people have this type of thought process when it comes to animal products, and I know I was there before as well.
It is kind of a... I'm trying to keep steering into my new drug is 8 hours sleep, which this week doing all this press and shit I haven't really gotten. But like there really is.
I really need 8 hours.
Yeah, 8 hours sleep is the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
Once you have a kid, and but I will say though, knocking out all your vices, it's the greatest morning you'll ever have, and the worst evenings. Every single day.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, I feel like I'm 15 years younger. This is great. And then just, the day hits you and all the shit that happens during the day. And then there's just always that time of like, oh God, when you see beer commercials, you're like, God, that looks delicious.
They're all happy and beautiful.
Yeah.
Best fucking thing ever. That's what I'm saying. And like, for me, it's a cheeseburger. But okay, I admit it will kill, and that will kill me.
Well, you know what? You just said that, and there's a cheeseburger place I want to try out here that I'm going to probably go to today.
Oh, God, you just fucked me up. Name it. What is it called?
I don't want to name it because everybody's going to go.
Yeah. You tell me afterwards. But it's, so see, here's where my mind is. It's like, it's Friday. We got it. We got through the week, baby.
But then it's Saturday and
that's
it's
the
Sunday.
Weekend, so we should be taking
That's what
it
happens.
easy.
Like
Make
pretty
them,
recently.
just go out and make them that smooth. Just
Yeah.
try it. Just do
There's an idea.
the chocolate one and then do the green one.
I
and
will.
then you'll be fine.
I'm excited.
I will.
Yeah.
But you gotta not
dude,
order.
I'm telling you, then you
I'm
just start.
excited
If
for
you
that
start
smoothie
eating well,
Next-
the fat has nowhere to hide. It just doesn't. It
right.
just it's like it's just over.
All right, you come back on this show, and I'm gonna be skinny, and I'm gonna call it the.
All right, so I want to comment on a little bit of things right there. So he has the mindset of, it's the weekend. I'm going into Friday. So what do people think when they're thinking Friday? I want to celebrate. I want to have a good time. I want to enjoy myself. All these sort of things, right? Is the typical mindset. I worked my Monday through Friday. Maybe you grinded through those Monday through Friday. Now you feel like you worked hard. Now you feel like, oh my gosh, I deserve to have this burger. I deserve to have this treat. I deserve to have these other things. But guess what was happening during that week? You were also making those same excuses. Oh, it's the week. I got to eat fast. I need something quick. I need something that's gonna hold me over because I'm gonna work all these long hours and I'm not gonna be able to eat as much as I'm supposed to. And I need to have all these other, energy drinks just to keep me going. The cycle continues and continues. And guess what? You finally have a vacation. Woo! I'm on vacation. I'm free from the work. I'm free from the responsibilities. I'm free from every day's a weekend. Well, now what you treat every day like a vacation. And what do you do on vacation? I eat all the junk food. I have the drinks. I have the, the fun time. So it's when do the healthy habits fit in, to that lifestyle? And it's so funny. Like his counter, like Bill Burr, his response is almost like, I'm not acknowledging any of that because all that's excuses. Because in his mind, he's like, I've been there. I know what you're doing. You're sharing excuses. I had those same excuses. Even his wife went right away. Oh, then there's Saturday, then there's Sunday. She immediately, when he said, oh, but it's Friday, she immediately was like, that's an excuse, right? And his reaction is, instead of like acknowledging, oh, I feel for you. Oh, like getting in the feelings. He's just like cuts right to it. Try the, the almond drink that I was recommending. Try the green smoothie that I was recommending. Try these things. And his response, and this is what's important too, and this is why I'm playing this one. I think it's important. His response is open. You know what I mean? He's in a state, and his excuses are okay. You know why they're okay? Because he's open to listening. He's in a state of open-mindedness, and they're not really excuses in a way. They're just more like objections of like he's actually trying to figure it out and trying to like he's actually being in a way open and actually being vulnerable and sharing like I'm actually struggling with this. If he was in a defensive state where he was like, oh no way, like oh I'm not going to do that, like this conversation is actually not even productive, to be honest, right? Because he's not going to be accepting of the information. So those are some of the things that I see in this little quick part right here. Do you want me to continue, or do you want to say something?
Just real quick, I'll say, it's sort of like a trick that we play on ourselves. The average person works most of what we would call physically their good years, right? In an attempt to set themselves up, when their body starts to slow down, we'll say, to enjoy their life, right? To retire and to, actually have some enjoyment. And what we do with this, oh, it's Friday, oh, it's the weekend, oh, I deserve this, oh, I'm going to party, oh, I'm going to let loose. What we do with that is we're taking away the quality of those future years. So yeah, you're still working Monday to Friday, of course. Yeah, you're still feeling stressed. You're still, working yourself to the bone. Sure, of course. But you're also chipping away at those good years later by going out and celebrating and overindulging. So it's a strange perspective, right? And I think for whatever reason we've been tricked or fallen into this trick of robbing ourselves of future, happiness and relaxation and like true celebration when, you have the money, you have the house, you're mature, you have the family, you have the grandkids, you want to spend time with them. That's when you need your health. That's when you need to feel well and have energy. And, who cares about those weekends that you do the same old thing and you forget about over and over again. So, but yeah, keep going.
Yeah, one last thing I just commented down below as well is like we don't miss out on like fun and good times and having a great time just because we're eating healthy and taking care of ourselves. In contrary, we could have even more fun and spend more time doing those things and have more energy to do those fun things, and so yeah, that's something I would say. Okay, so I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit more because I want us to wrap this up pretty soon, but let's get to some of the main points near the end. That he gives us some advice and see how he starts to really start to take in some of this good advice.
Bar.
Yeah.
And ice cream was ice cream.
Right.
Okay. Fat people who just went over the rails were the ones who were like, what if I take this and stick it in that? And then the ice cream companies ripped them off.
Right.
But they never sued him because they were so ashamed.
Let me go back to this point that
taught
he's
me
making.
that. He taught me how to fucking
Was
tie
he
up.
saying to you like how to get high? Because he's like, hey, man, I really want to enjoy sugar.
Yeah, no, that's the fucking thing. I'm telling you, I used to do a bit about that in my act. How all of that shit, like when I was a kid, a candy bar was a candy bar, and ice cream was ice cream.
Right.
Okay. Fat people who just went over the rails were the ones who were like, what if I take this and stick it in that? And then the ice cream companies ripped them off.
Right.
But they never sued them because they were so ashamed to waddle up and be like, hey, I came up with that. Right? Like the shit that some of my fat friends have done with food. I mean, it's like it's not even like mainstream porn. It's like the Fed should come in and grab your hard drive.
Oh man,
That was a shock
You should
to
have
me.
to call your neighbors that you moved in. You have to tell your neighbors that you moved into that neighborhood, so when they go to their barbecue, they know what the fuck they're in for. But I'm telling you, man, you can like really, if you get a nutritionist, it's anything else. You would like, if you want to learn something, if you learn how to fight, you go to like a dojo and somebody learns how to fight. This fucking shit where you try to figure it out, or you talk to somebody at a bar going, it's good, it's good, eat the pistachios. Eat pistachios with the shells, because that's what the nutrition's. Oh, really? You just listen to the shit. Half the shit that I told you was probably wrong, because I'm trying to.
But it sounds good.
It
makes sense. It's all whole. Okay, I'm gonna drink the shakes.
Yeah, there you go.
Either did you want to?
I was gonna say that I had a.
Get up and stretch. Just literally eat a smoothie. And she'll probably make it for you.
Dude.
I would.
Yeah,
I
you
would.
make me a
I'll make
smoothie,
you. I'll make you the whole
My
diet.
computer.
Sounds like the beginning of a hit love song. If you make me a smoothie.
I was gonna say it was such a shock to me
piano
the
keys.
food here.
I love it.
Moving from Israel, seeing the food here, like breakfast, people eat like okay, eggs and pancake, but it's not just one pancake. They'll get like a pile of pancakes
No, the American.
with like a stick of butter
We just
on
call it
top.
Stack. You're really
And
describing.
no,
how
they're
high
calling
it
it breakfast.
A stack. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the bread.
is. Pile of pancake.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's true.
If that was written that way in the menu, I'd be like, oh, wait a minute, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
All right, so real quick, I want to comment on a couple things that were really fascinating there. So one thing is that when he says that, well, you go ahead first. Is there anything that you want to add? And then I'll go.
Yeah, I mean, so first off, blaming, saying food was food. I mean, there were different problems with food in the past, right? 7-Up had lithium bicarbonate put in it. Coca-Cola had cocaine put in it. There were other problems with food. Food has always been problematic, but yeah, there are new. As the industrialization of food really took off, there's been a lot of new, chemical and synthetic additions to our diet. But, that for Bill Burr to say that it's fat people that are the reason behind it, when I was in university, I lived in a house full of athletes, and we had a deep fryer, and I can't tell you what type of food we didn't deep fry. We literally tried everything. We deep fried everything. We ate constantly. We were concocting all sorts of weird stuff. We made all kinds of I don't think there's a single fruit or other yummy food we didn't put into a pie. Food. We were all skinny, healthy guys. But what's so problematic and why I wanted to comment on it is because it's such a misguided. Concept that fat people that are the only ones that are unhealthy, or that fat people are the ones pushing the food agendas, because a lot of times I think it might have been partially a joke, but I think people fail to recognize a lot of the time that yes, people have different metabolisms. So someone might see me go eat, because I have a fast metabolism, someone might see me go eat that deep fried food and then go do it themselves. And, it'll show differently on them, right? But the thing that people forget or lose sight of is that I may not be any healthier. I may not look fat, but that doesn't mean I'm not suffering from, atherosclerosis, right? I have high blood pressure, or my cholesterol isn't problematic. So, I just wanted to comment on that and say that I think the unhealthy people that are eating a ton of garbage that don't look fat. So that's not the only indicator of health. And yes, obesity or body weight is important and something to address. But I felt like correcting or providing my own opposition to what Bill Burr is saying there. But go ahead, Kev.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I do think that part was kind of like just him being a joke, because he's like, I used to say this in my bit, you know what I mean? But yeah, like what you're saying, like when you go down to it, it's definitely not true. To every single person is like that, but he's kind of like saying mixing and matching all these different crazy concoctions and stuff like that. But anyways, what I did think it was really, really fascinating is taking the advice from a nutritionist. Right, is that's where he's getting this advice, that he's being able to share this information from. And he gave an example of if you want to learn how to fight, learn how to fight in a dojo or something like that. And I always say this too, if you're going to learn how to run a business, you should learn how to run a business from someone that's running a business, that's successful at it, And so many people are taking nutrition advice from people that are probably not qualified to really give them any kind of nutrition advice. Like he was making the joke, like some guy at the bar, saying, hey, some pistachios and make sure you eat it with the shells, just some random, advice, that people might give, and so, yeah, I think we can start wrapping this up here because I think this is a really fascinating topic. And I'm going to, like I said, you guys can totally look at the link in down below. I'm going to add this video to there. And I think that adding in a little bit of context, a little bit more information, maybe some people that you might know, I think can garner some interest from people, especially when they're talking about topics like this. I know just recently, maybe we'll cover in the future, Joe Rogan talking about glyphosate, and the issues there. But I mean, there's so much different things that I think, that we can cover and talk about and really focus on and bring, really what's going on in maybe the mainstream or the popularity areas, and just really bringing them to the forefront and bringing a different perspective into them that can highlight hopefully how we can help better, our health, men's health, the families that we live with, and just making sure that we help to create the world make sure that we help to make the world a better place, essentially, because like you were saying in the beginning, that we want to help to make an impact on some people. But one thing that, as you can see, we're just starting this on Facebook, and there's only been one viewer, right? And it starts to grow. But that's the key. Like, part of what is happening right now is the key to make a bigger impact, to hopefully more eyes can be on it. And I think that YouTube is also another great way, because this is the style that a lot of people do this type of video and response videos on YouTube. As well. So anyways, if this is something that you guys want to see in the future, if you made it to the end of this replay, definitely comment below that you want to see more content like this. And Mike, is there anything that maybe you want to wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, not anything in particular. You sort of covered it all very well there, Kev. So yeah, just thank you for having me on. Thanks for putting all this tech together. As always, you're the tech guru. And yeah, comment. Let us know if this spoke to you. If you want to see more of this kind of content. If you think we should cover other kinds of content. If you hate us, if you love us, right? Leave your feedback. And yeah, I mean, Miguel, thank you so much again. And men do need to be around longer to take care of their families and friends and animals and the planet, and to be healthy and strong so that we can fend for and for our families. And Kev and I have both lost fathers. We're both very aware of and very dedicated to the idea that men are dying too early, and it is preventable, and that's why this space exists. So again, if there's topics you think we should cover, if there's stuff that you feel that our society needs to talk about, or that we need to create a space for, and particularly for the men out there in this world, please let us know. And as always, thanks for tuning in, thanks for joining, and yeah, we will see you again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I appreciate your time. And yeah, we'll be seeing you next week.